Cave diving can be one of those adrenaline-releasing activities that give you life. Like many of these activities, however, it has every right to take that life away from you. Knowing your environment, having a group of professionals by your side, and the skill level to handle the dive are all key elements to survival, but lacking just one of these things can mean the end. Today, we'll take a look at several divers who went in over their head and never came back. Let's talk about what happened to the divers of Mount Gambier. Mount Gambier is the second most populated city in southern Australia. Near the city, in 1938, a sinkhole was discovered in a field known as Thompson's Padlock on a farm near Allendale East. While the hole was about a foot across at first, it was later opened up a meter for exploration. In the 1960s, the first diver traveled into the sinkhole, now titled the Shaft, exploring a depth of about 21 meters, but we'll soon discover how large this cavity was. The main chamber of the shaft is about 140 meters long and 80 meters wide. It branches off into two tunnels that travel down 80 meters on the northwest side and 124 meters on the east. The water level is about 7 meters under the surface, so divers and their equipment have to be lowered down by a hoist system to reach it. The name was given because on a sunny day, a single shaft of light can travel down into the clear waters quite a ways. It's a beautiful interior, so the cave is a sought-out adventure for many experienced divers willing to take the plunge. May 26, 1973, a group of 9 divers wanted to take that very plunge, heading to Mount Gambier, equipped with giddy dreams and aspirations. Setting up camp at the top of the sinkhole, only 8 divers descended down into the waters, while the 9th diver, Joan Harper, decided to stay topside and make soup as well as help in any other way she could. On the 28th, they were all set and began to descend down the 7 meters of rock. According to the reports, they never intended to explore beyond the edge, a narrow downward sloping continuation of the cave off to the side of the main chamber. This was where the natural light of the opening faded out and they were This is where the natural opening of the light faded out and they were left in a much darker environment. Beyond this area was considerably more dangerous. The team would run into loose limestone, unexplored territory, and worst of all, nitrogen narcosis, an anesthetic effect from breathing certain gases under pressure. While several of the divers had traversed the cave before, there were problems from the get-go with their exploration. A number of safety procedures were overlooked at launch. The shot line did not extend all the way to the cavern floor and was not equipped with extra tanks of oxygen. The divers neglected to assign partners to keep an eye on each other during exploration. They were not using any kind of air management procedures to preserve their tank's supply. There was also no safety guideline to get them back out if they became lost. Their excuse for this was that 8 safety lines would have been hazardous in a cramped space, and the more experienced divers didn't expect the inexperienced to venture as far as they did into the tunnels. The stage was set for tragedy, so what exactly happened? 8 divers descended into the depths, but immediately trouble started when one of the experienced members, Robert Smith, began to feel the effects of nitrogen narcosis, forcing him to return to the surface. He spent 8 minutes circling around looking for animal bones in the shallower waters before he was approached by another diver, Glenn Millett, who was motioning that he was already running out of air. Millett had wanted to inform his sister, Christine, that they needed to return to the surface, but they had gotten separated in the depths. Glenn and Robert returned to the surface, where they found Larry Reynolds a moment later and Peter Burr, who had returned due to low oxygen. Now, there were 4 divers up and 4 still in the depths with tanks that had to be running low. Glenn quickly equipped a spare tank and headed back down to look for the rest of the team, as they knew time was running out. But what he found was chilling. As he approached a rock cliff that dropped off into nothingness at 69 meters down, he found Stephen Millett's camera and torch, with loose, shifted silt all around and almost no visibility. Glenn returned to the surface where there was already an ambulance waiting to send a search party down. Peter also descended to take one last look, but he came up empty. With the time that had passed by now, the 4 remaining members were officially considered bodies and not missing persons. The surviving divers' last visual on the 4 who were lost paints a story of what happened to them. Upon turning around, Christine Millett and Gordon Roberts attempted to surface in fear of their low oxygen. They were seen swimming straight up into a dome in the rock ceiling that had no exit, frantically moving around as if they were scared and lost, most likely suffering from nitrogen narcosis and confused. When the bodies were recovered, they were huddled together, embraced in what they knew was their final moments. John Bockerman was last seen swimming furiously downward into the depths. The only logical reasoning is that he too fell victim to the narcosis and thought he was swimming to freedom. His body was recovered 6.1 meters further into the depths than the others, having traveled the furthest from the surface. The final victim, Stephen Millett, was found trapped under the ceiling. While his things were found on the cave floor, he was floating with a buoyancy vest inflated, desperately trying to find an exit, only to die trapped under an overhang. The 4 divers who perished were inexperienced, but it should have been the whole team's job to keep an eye on them. Imagine dying alone, in the dark, terrified and confused, because every breath you're taking is poisoning your mind. Suffocating to death is one of my greatest fears, because when I was a kid, I almost drowned. It's a panic that's unreal, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody. Thanks for watching. For more true crime and horror, please consider subscribing. Game with me on Twitch, follow me on Twitter, and as always, be well.